you have to scale inference, and you have to observe inference, because the life cycle doesn't stop when you've delivered the software to production.
Welcome to the / podcast, where we lean into the future of IT by inviting fellow thought leaders, innovators, and problem solvers to slash through its complexity. Today's guest is James McShane, a cloud-native architect at Portworx by Pure Storage. James has spent the last decade deeply involved in cloud ecosystems, shaping solutions and guiding organizations through their DevOps journeys. Though he'll be the first to tell you that he got into DevOps by accident. Originally from South Bend, Indiana, James spent 10 years living in Minneapolis before settling in Cincinnati, where he now lives with his wife and 3 kids. His professional path is as unique as it is inspiring. He began in math and music. It seems to be a common pattern among us software engineers. And during graduate school at Indiana University, he even started a small business focus on flip teaching. We're going to hear more about that. That sounds actually pretty cool. Large-scale math classes. The entrepreneurial spark ultimately steered him towards software development and eventually cloud architecture. Welcome to the / James.
Thanks, James. I'm really happy to be here, and love to talk about this pathway through the cloud ecosystem and how we all get to the point that we're at right now.
Awesome. Yeah. So first, I got to hear about this. I've never heard of this term, flip teaching. What is that?
So flip teaching was definitely emerging in the late 2000s, early 2010s as a model for students to engage with material before then encountering the professor, to then use the ability of the professor to diagnose, train, and guide students from initial encounter of the material to a deeper understanding. So flip teaching is, let's start with here, give you the outline, give you the basics, and then use that professor's deep knowledge to take you to the next level and identify places of weakness and turn them into places of strength. So it started as a tutoring platform and then turned into a place where we could enable students to attempt a different mechanism of learning. Rather than having the professor do the baseline, we could let the professor do the deep exploration and use that as a mechanism to get better outcomes in class.
Cool. It might dovetail a little bit into like the modern day AI assisted classroom. I'm seeing some really cool tools that are popping up in classrooms now, that where we can focus on, individualizing the attention that the students get, with seeing where they're struggling, that sort of thing.
Yeah, this is a linear pathway, right? You start with models like this, and then you turn that into something that happens consistently, right? This the education ecosystem is something I've stepped away from, but what's going on today is still attempting to, the goal is still the same, right? High quality student outcomes driven by hands-on experience and guidance in places where they're falling off the track.
Very cool. Yeah. All right, but we're not here to talk about education today. That is not necessarily your big thing. I know you as you're the Kubernetes guy. That's kind of how my brain compartmentalizes you. Is that fair? Is that a fair assessment?
It's a fair assessment. It's where I've been living for the last 10 years, and I had an opportunity to dive in with an organization starting in 2016 with Kubernetes. I was working right at the point where it was turning from a product that was really isolated in the cloud. The clouds, Google had produced it. Red Hat had just switched over to using Kubernetes. And so I got to be early on the train and learn through some interesting transition times with a number of products developing for this, and then be on the train as that exploded in the early 2020 COVID period. Really felt like a time when it transitioned from a side project that many organizations were trying to the baseline way that organizations are delivering infrastructure. So I was really grateful to have the opportunity to start in it so early and learn some of the lessons that the broader community did, to then see it grow to where it is today. It's been really exciting.
Now, the COVID thing, it's interesting. There's a lot of things happened during COVID. I don't know if it was coincidence or, it was causation, right? What do you think? Do you think the isolation we felt, did that contribute to the cloud kind of taking root better at that time?
having seen a number of different organizations, right? I've been a consultant for the last. I was a consultant for around 6 years. I got to see a number of different organizations all around that same time period, and keeping in touch with folks that I've worked with over my entire career. COVID forced acceleration and delivery on a specific subset of organizations that may not have had that same pressures beforehand, right? Healthcare, health insurance, responsiveness for drive-through and retail. And so that responsiveness to customer needs that were evolving really quickly, I think drove organizations to cloud, drove organizations to cloud native. And then in the background, I think there was an undercurrent of open source and a developer first sort of mentality.
Mm-hmm.
And all those things I think came together to really mature Kubernetes ecosystem very quickly.
And I'm glad I say Kubernetes. I've heard people say Kubernetes, but you're the expert. So that's in my brain you are. So you say it the way I do. I do know that it's not the way Flavor Flav said it. I believe he called it Kubernetes.
What is Kubernetes?
That's
well, you know what? And I think he is the foremost expert in our field. So I think we'll just have to follow him.
We need to go with the Kubernetes. Yeah. I don't know if you guys have seen that. He did was it Cameo? Was that the platform?
Okay.
Cameo? Yeah, he had a Cameo where somebody asked him to explain Kubernetes, and it was funny. Anyway, he is the foremost expert, right? He did save. Wasn't he the one? Was that the guy who saved Red Lobster? So we are indebted to him.
He did. He did save Red Lobster.
So we've the cloud thing. Obviously, as you were saying, it's kind of taken root, and Kubernetes isn't just a toy, right? I mean, it's driving humongous workloads. It's running entire data centers, all of the awesome things these days. So we're a little more mature these days, and so but that brings with it some different maturity models and different ways of using the cloud. And so let's talk about kind of how we're using the cloud evolving right now.
So I think there's two key directions that we can discuss here, right? The first you mentioned is Kubernetes driving the data center, and I think the disruption of Broadcom purchasing VMware has caused organizations to rethink their kind of baseline data center virtualization strategy, and Kubernetes has opened up a pathway there that is aligned to the second wave that we see, which is the evolution of the AI ecosystem alongside the Kubernetes ecosystem, right? And so those two things are happening somewhat along the same timelines. The Broadcom disruption, although the purchase happened in 2023, many organizations we see reevaluating their virtualization strategy right now. And then AI is also in this emerging state where folks are trying to determine how are they going to operationalize it. Is there a maturity level in the cloud versus the cost allocation appropriately for it, right? If I'm doing experiments, I don't want to rack up 7-figure, 8-figure bills with those experiments. but I also need to be able to get AI experiments off the ground effectively. How do I actually make this operational in my organization? And so these two things are coming together, right? Kubernetes runs the data center now. Kubernetes runs these AI workloads, right? All these neoclouds that are coming up are offering Kubernetes platforms as their baseline substrate. And so these things are happening at the same time. And it's like, how do I run these workloads effectively? How do I place them in the cloud versus on-prem? And the discussions are all happening at once. And I think it puts Kubernetes at a really interesting focal point right now.
That's why I love talking to you, James. You use words like substrate. You know what I mean? I just feel smarter talking to you. No, I do want to ask about, maybe back up a little bit, the Broadcom thing. Some folks may not be familiar with kind of why that was so disruptive. Why did it kind of shake it kind of shook everybody, to its core almost. It was a big deal. Why was that so disruptive?
It was a big deal because, first of all, VMware ruled the ecosystem, right? They had a 96-97% market share for virtualization across, Fortune 2000 across the United States and across the world, right? Everyone had VMware. It was the default. And the key element that changed, right, is Broadcom's aggressive pricing strategies came to the next renewal period. And the key element that happened was Broadcom didn't change a number of prices all at once. They said, you can't do these smaller subsets of our product. You have to buy our full product portfolio, VCF, and the whole baseline there. Many organizations were using VMware just for kind of a baseline virtualization, ESX, vCenter, and things like that. And so to be forced to go from that subset to the full product catalog, yes, some organizations are like, yeah, I love the whole catalog. I'm already invested in Tanzu. I'm already doing a lot of these things, and so this makes sense to me. A larger percentage, I think, were just using that baseline capability, and so they see this as a 50%, 2x to 3x to even 5x uplift on their current pricing. And so now there's this business risk that's been injected into like how your business is being run, right? This is the foundational aspect, right? We went through a transition in the in the 2000s to the early 2010s from physical infrastructure to virtual infrastructure. That was driven by the maturing of the VMware platform, right?
Yes.
Everything they could do.
Yeah.
And now and so it's like now everything's on virtual, and you look at, and the ecosystem's there, right? Especially when you look at specific verticals, right? Healthcare, where you get your products delivered to you for VMware in this format. And so now organizations are looking at this price hike and some technical things that are changing, right? There's clear technical walling off that's happening in the Broadcom product portfolio in a way that it wasn't walled before the acquisition.
Oh, okay.
And so all these pieces happen, all these changes happen around the same time frame. Folks organizations renewed their contracts in 2023. VMware is such a central part of most of these organizations' infrastructure. We see a lot of 3-year, 5-year renewals that happened right at the time of the acquisition. And that puts folks in this place in 2025 to say, okay, now to effectively deliver new strategies, I have to begin now to be able to migrate by the end of 2026, early 2027. And there's a number of pathways, right? There's other traditional virtualization providers. There's the cloud providers offering VMware-like services. Even that is getting some risk injected into it. And then there's transitioning into a model of the future. And that's where I think we see containerization as the next transition from physical to virtual to containerization on physical, right? There were many times I've seen like a ton of organizations deliver, Kubernetes platforms on virtual machines on physical hosts. And today that's not a necessary layer. We can get the best performance, we can get the best density, we can get the highest throughput from containerized applications. It's just a process on that bare metal, on that physical iron, and you're going to get the best results out of that and be able to manage a broader scale platform.
And the Broadcom, that transition of them, it's not that it's anything nefarious. That's more of them like repositioning themselves and focusing on a kind of a subset of the market so they can support them better, right? That's kind of what they're doing, right?
Yeah, they've stated that goal directly. They want to refocus. They said this in the partner ecosystem. They said this in the marketplace. They want to refocus on their top 50, top 100 customers and provide advanced high-level services and capabilities for those top customers. But the marketplace had like a layer of VMware across, not like the top 50, not the top 100, but the top, 5,000 organizations, right? And so that long tail, and let's be clear, right? Those top 50 organizations, some of them wanted to invest in the broader, high value product portfolio that Broadcom offers, and others of them don't, right? And so that mix, I think, drives, okay, Broadcom's identifying where their top customers are, and then there's a reallocation of the rest of the market.
Okay. Well, thanks for that context. So I do think it was for me for a while. I didn't quite understand what was going on because I know everybody's up in arms about the Broadcom thing, and you kind of dig into it. It seems nefarious at first, it's like, oh, they're screwing us over, but it's just a really they're focusing their efforts, and a lot of businesses do that.
Yeah, and I think too, I come with a very particular perspective of Kubernetes being able to solve a lot of these challenges, but in
Mm-hmm.
the end, it's aligned to what we see as a broader business category, business practice as a whole, right? Like you need you're not going to succeed with delivering like high quality, high outcome services without focusing your product portfolios and offerings. Now, I think what we see is, hey, if you have something that is this baseline, you have to balance those things effectively, and maybe identify like, hey, the choice that's being offered today now is who are the partners that you're going to work with effectively to deliver your these needed business capabilities,
Mm-hmm.
right? For some organizations, they see they see Broadcom as the partner to go forward with. Some organizations see the cloud providers. Other organizations are digging in with vendors like Red Hat, with ourselves at Pure Storage, with other providers that are reshaping how they're running their data center, reshaping how they're running their cloud. The question is just who do you want to partner with to deliver these capabilities? And there's a number of options on the field today, and I think that the decision landscape is happening and evolving really rapidly right now.
So, yeah, no, I totally agree. And like, as we were talking about earlier, we've kind of matured in the cloud. We've kind of grown up with the cloud, and the cloud is a thing now. We realize it's just other people's computers, that sort of thing. But so it used to be back in the day, if I want to start up a company, I might buy a big old server and put it in a closet somewhere in my house and run my business off of it and stuff. Is that different now? Now that we have this familiarity and the offerings from kind of these big hyperscalers that are out there, bootstrapping a new company, is that different than it was in the past?
Yeah, starting getting off the ground, absolutely. Especially when you think about how AI has reshaped this, right? It's not just you know even changing from 5 years ago. 5 years ago, it's yeah, I'll spin up workloads in the cloud, I'll start there and go forward. Now it's okay, yeah, who's my AI solution provider that I'm putting next to these workloads that are running in a cloud provider, and then how do I scale both of those? How do I scale both of those aspects of my business, right? The AI solution might have to evolve into a fine-tuned model as my business grows and scales and adapts, as alongside the cloud computing model, right? As the business grows, then the economics changes, right? We can all, yeah, workloads for startups can start in the cloud, but we've seen many examples recently of data center repatriation as you look at more stable run rate businesses where you can run your experimentation in the public cloud, but for effective cost effective solution delivery, that hey, we've established a market here, building a data center and building those capabilities in house, and bringing once you have that sensitive data, bringing AI alongside of that starts to become there's an inflection point there to move workloads from where you started in the cloud to now bringing it back on premise and starting to scale there.
But for a bootstrapping and repatriation, that's you explained it, but it's the idea is really bringing it back in your home country, but kind of like think of it in countries, but bringing it back home to your own data center that you already have. But for bootstrap companies, is it kind of like, as you said, I'm establishing my market, making sure I have product viability and those sort of things in the public cloud, and then that capital expense later, maybe when I get another funding round and I can actually afford to stand up my own infrastructure. Is that the pattern you're seeing predominantly? Is that people will go back on prem from the cloud for? How's that work?
Yeah, I think there's two avenues we see today. Is that for companies that are in that maturing phase or finding the product market fit, they do start in the cloud. They start maybe with a specific provider that they're investing in,
Hmm.
whether that's one of the big three. There's a number of startup programs now that are offered by each one of those cloud providers. But if they're more niche, then I do see like an evolution today of more niche AI solution providers, GPU solution providers, right? The neo clouds I mentioned, the top three I see in that space are like CoreWeave, Lambda Labs, and Crusoe. There's other companies competing in that space as well, and so the question you kind of have to ask yourself there is like, who am I going to bootstrap with? Because they'll give you money, they'll have that funding to bootstrap you, and then there's a whole separate set of questions as you grow beyond that, right? As you like, okay, now we need to deliver multi-region capabilities or multi-cloud capabilities, right? This becomes business dependent, right? What industry are you operating in? And I think those kind of regulation concerns, the financing concerns, become the next phase after you've gotten off the ground.
And then the kind of that repatriation decision, is that really just a big company like we already had a data center, we pushed some stuff out in the cloud and we're realizing it costs us more to run particular workloads and we're going to come back to our own data center that we already built? Or is it we make a decision to build a data center, or maybe go in a colo or something like that, or and make that capital investment to buy a bunch of infrastructure? What does that decision line look like? How do you make that decision?
Well, I think there's a great case study that 37 Signals has published recently, that they're going through this journey right now where they've invested heavily in AWS. They were doing things in S3. They were doing things in AWS cloud services, and did do that capital expenditure to move compute to the data center. And just recently, they've moved their data storage from S3 in the cloud down to a FlashBlade running in their colo. And this starts to then stratify as you get from 37 Signals is a mid-size, they've been running for a long time, versus of course enterprises with an existing data center footprint. With that story, it looks more like, right, all of those organizations have a data center. They've had a data center forever. They shifted some set of workloads to the cloud, and now it's more of a balancing question, right? It's a question of where should these workloads land in the long term, and how do I like lay out my costs effectively from between a CapEx and OpEx model based off the funding that my business is offering me here. And so there's what we see is there is an evaluation of that run rate in the public cloud at an application by application level. That FinOps mentality that developed in 22, 23, that really I think matured over the course of a couple of years, is now letting folks make more mature repatriation decisions in the enterprise, because they can see that unit cost, and exposing that unit cost, I think, makes it more clear when it makes sense to bring things back on-prem.
And is it all workloads? Like, it's kind of a curve, right? So it's a curve of your cost for in the public cloud versus, if I already have a data center and I'm investing, there's a certain point where they cross, and it makes sense to repatriate. Does that always happen? Is it just later for certain workloads? Is it just an inevitable thing? What does that even look like? What's that scaling factor look like?
So I really see two elements here. I think there's a data gravity element, and there's like a network connectivity bandwidth element as well, right? Because network, we kind of view the network as free in the data center. Of course, yeah. It's not free, right? You've invested in a certain level of network infrastructure that's more challenging to change in the data center. But it's the sort of thing where the network is run as it's run as a register out in the cloud, right? It's always ticking against you, versus in the data center, as long as you're not over consuming that capacity, that becomes an element where you can be cost optimized when you bring a high network bandwidth consuming application back in the data center. And what consumes that bandwidth is that element of data gravity, right? If there's an application that requires a lot of data transfer from across multi-region from one service to another, or from the data center up to the cloud and then back out, right? That is a place where I see a lot of applications moving back in to say, I want to run right next to where my data is stored, whether it's mainframe applications or large databases that are running on-prem. Then that can become the first set of like workloads that get repatriated back into a data center.
Gotcha. Okay. We talked a little bit so far about like kind of AI. I mean, it's funny, every episode talks about AI because it's kind of a big deal right now. You've heard of it, right? AI, artificial intelligence.
We all have to, right?
Yeah.
I think it's required in a podcast to talk about it. Right?
People are now, a lot of the industry started off with, just consuming products that were AI driven products. They had AI based features and that sort of thing. But now I think we're kind of evolving a little bit, and people are starting to kind of build their own AI based workloads and those sort of things. What does that look like for companies as they're investing and they're like, I want to make my product now have AI driven features, or even my internal product for our enterprise, and we want to make AI powered solutions. What does that look like? What are those decisions? What's the pathway for delivering those?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple aspects of this, right? The first problem that organizations have to tackle to deliver their own internal AI solutions starts with a data quality and a data management approach, right?
Mm-hmm.
What I see like very mature organizations who understand that they can't just throw out AI slop and have it associate to their brand. They understand that the first thing that they need is an effective delivery of, what is their data model and how is that data maintained, tracked, governed, and delivered to, inputs to their AI system, and then ongoing, observability and tracking of how that AI is being grown. And so that first step is happening in a number of different places, whether it's, a Databricks solution or the public cloud where they start to put that, data model together, or larger scale data lake solutions that I see being more, maturing more and more on-prem. So it starts with the data, right? And then we have to figure out how we operationalize the AI infrastructure itself, right? How do I make my AI solution engineers effective in the AI development cycle, which I see as kind of a double, the AI development cycle is more of like a double loop sort of development model, where you have the AI training the AI training lifecycle starts with, an individual developer, doing experimentation. That goes into a set of training workloads. Training is, high demand, high throughput, very intense workload, right? So the question is, I can probably do my experimentation rounds in the cloud at first, but as I get these high demand workloads for training, the question is, what tooling am I going to use to make that effective as I start to scale up my training to larger and larger, parameters, to larger and larger data sets? And how do I run that as a cost-effective solution in my organization? We see the developing, cloud solution providers developing solutions around that. I think Google's DRA, Dynamic Resource Allocator, shows you some of the ways that Kubernetes struggles to solve this problem, right? DRA is all about scheduling workloads to then be able to pick up, like say, hey, I need this type of GPU configuration to run in this period of time. I want it in this priority. And Dynamic Resource Allocator combined with Q is an approach that the clouds are taking to be able to say, hey, these high margin boxes, right? These most critical, compute environments that I need. How do I get access to them in the cloud in a cost-effective manner? So, like Kubernetes and Q has this ability then to scale up to take that demand and then scale down when that's done. That's flipped on the head of the traditional high-performance computing model offered by a product like Slurm, which has been more established in the data center. Slurm asks, how can I prioritize effective, a limited set of compute and storage resources? How can I then schedule workloads into that? Whereas Kubernetes was kind of built always on this scalability model, right? Mm-hmm. It's a distributed system that can scale up. So there's problems of AI infrastructure, and then there's also problems of, the AI software development lifecycle, right? Because after you deliver that model into inference, you have to scale inference and you have to observe inference, because the lifecycle doesn't stop when you've delivered the software to production. And I think this is where DevOps, the DevOps ecosystem can actually be a helpful informer onto how we can do this software development lifecycle for AI. So this cycle comes back to, hey, I have to observe this environment. I have to look for drift in the models, and then ensure that my team is aware of that and can retrain appropriately from the data that we're seeing in the wild. So the DevOps and observability capabilities that we've been developing for our baseline applications is actually super helpful when it comes to how we run AI in a large organization as well.
I mean, you brought up something. It's just reminiscent of You mentioned scheduling, and I'm thinking back to, like, hear all the horror stories. I had all my punch cards in my little basket on the front of my bike, and I'm running over to the data center for my time slot that I had available. Are we back to that? Like, are we like scheduling time with little time windows that we have now?
Well, we think about like these really high cost, it's why Nvidia is through the roof, right?
Hmm.
These high value, compute devices. It in the end, we do have to be able to then schedule those resources effectively in the cloud. That we schedule it effectively because these are high cost machines, that we're running against. In the data center, there's limited availability and there's a number of workloads that are running against them. And we I think we have all the lessons from those early days. We have the lessons from distributed systems, and now it's a matter of putting together a tool set that works to then allocate those resources effectively. So, I think when it comes to whether it's Q or a project like Slinky that's bringing some of the intelligence of Slurm into the Kubernetes ecosystem, these projects are really evolving very quickly to take the lessons that we've learned from these other industries and the history that we have here and bring it to bear in kind of how the data center and how the cloud solution providers are building this as well.
And it was, I mean, obviously we don't schedule time with computers anymore. We got past that, and that was just based on. I think it was more of a matter of scarcity. Is that where we are right now? Is that just those things, those GPUs that they're very scarce? There's just so much demand that there's just they can't keep up. Is that what we're experiencing right now?
They're scarce and they're expensive. Yeah, absolutely. Like you have a limited set of GPUs and you have a lot of demand, right?
Hmm.
The demand is high because whether it's fine tuning or training or even scaling inference, you need access to those GPUs. So they're high demand devices that are being shipped at a limited capacity time. Everyone's talking about AI. Everyone's doing this kind of baseline AI, these baseline AI workloads, and so the supply and demand curve has now pushed down uh, push down this price point, right, where it's a really high price point and limited availability because you can only produce so many GPU devices at once. And then there's a final piece, which is we're seeing the evolution happening so quickly, right? Whether it's the Blackwell chips coming out, the AI chip manufacturers are also evolving very quickly, and so the best AI comes from the best physical hardware, which I think 5-10 years ago we weren't as worried about the physical hardware. Things were
Hmm.
moving on. We shifted more to a commodity compute perspective.
Right.
That's shifted back again.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
There's differentiation when you're running on an H200 or a Blackwell chip, right? It's why those things matter, and there's only so many of them in the world today.
So you brought up inference, and I don't know if a lot of people understand these terms. Let's make sure we baseline some folks here. So when it comes to AI, when you have these models, you're talking about large language models or whatever type of model in AI and machine learning. There's that training phase as you were talking about, and that is like I've got a training plan. I've got a bunch of data that I want to just cram through this network and let it adjust itself and learn. That's what it's called, machine learning. But at some point, we cram all this data through over and over and over, repetitive, and we get to the point where we've tested the model and we're like, you know what? This is working the way we want, right? This is giving me the right answers. It's doing the right stuff. And then we operationalize that model. We take a snapshot of it basically, and now we deploy it to a point where we're using it within our applications. Just like you hear, like, oh, GPT-5 came out. They were spending months cramming data through these things, right? But at some point, they took a snapshot of it and then they said, "This is GPT-5. Go use it, people." Same thing with enterprises and companies who are using AI workloads. How does that differ as far as to how do you deploy? Because as you said, this is a high volume, high throughput when we're doing training, but inference, it does require some of the same machinery. We need those GPUs because you're still dealing with large linear algebra constructs, matrices, vectors, blah, 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 blah. So what does the compute look like? How does that differ? How do we deploy these things differently?
Yeah, I think for inference, we see there is a lower demand on the individual GPUs, but we have to think about the challenge of scaling inference as we think about the interaction model,
Hmm.
right? Is this something that is being pushed to an app that's being interacted with by millions of users? Is this something that's in the life cycle of a business process that's
Hmm.
running internally
Right.
based off of data that we're seeing out there? I'm seeing the evolution of quite a bit of computer vision applications that are being deployed on manufacturing floors.
Oh, yeah.
That's a use case I see evolving very quickly right now. So what that requires, right, is it's actually, it looks like the cycle of web development of the like late 2010s, where you have some of the scalability concerns, right? How do I scale and deliver? It's an API, right? Inference is, how do I deliver this API? How do I ensure that it remains healthy, right? These devices, like the GPUs, have an ability, like we'll say they have a depreciation cycle that's faster than your commodity compute. And so you need to ensure that the GPUs are healthy, check, get those memory corruptions and all those errors that can happen in the system, make those visible and schedule workloads away when that occurs. I need to be able to do time slicing effectively, right? The individual inferences might not need a full GPU, but I might want to deploy a number of different models to be able to test. Maybe you want to have a main primary production model, but then have a secondary testing model and inference as well, and split the traffic between the two of them. That's why we see these kind of agentic gateway products coming out here as well, because you might want to send your inference to two different models at once, test those results, or even send those back to an internal observing system, right? And so there's a number of challenges when it comes to, okay, how do I get this really close to where the user interaction is, right? Do I need to deploy this, if it's a user application, multi-region in the US? Do I need to deploy it globally? And these are big models. These are very large scale things. And so, the failover cycles and the capabilities there to be able to operationalize it effectively, it's why you probably, when you're running ChatGPT, sometimes it sits there and spins, because maybe you've been connected to a device that has to fail over, or running a new model somewhere else. So that same problem exists in the enterprise, and you have to figure out how to build that as an operational excellence capability that you have internally.
Man, you just blew my mind. See, here all along, what I was assuming was going on, because that happens to me with ChatGPT. I'll ask it something and it'll sit there and spin. And what I assumed was I was asking such a hard question because I'm so smart that it was having a hard time answering it. You know what I mean? That I'd stumped ChatGPT. You're just telling me it's like a failover scenario is what's really going on. Is that true?
I mean, look, you've probably stumped ChatGPT a few times, but there's probably also a time that you're getting rescheduled to a new device. You're in a queue of processing inference. You're behind a few other people who maybe have asked some harder questions. But it's all about cycling that through and getting, it's a data transfer problem, right? You've asked the question, it's gone through a cycle, it's sent the data somewhere to then be processed by an individual machine. And so it's in that life cycle somewhere that you're getting paused, you maybe get rescheduled, and then the question gets answered and sent back up to you.
What it could be, now that I'm thinking about it, you brought on a good point. It could be that it's realizing I need to talk to a smarter machine to be able to service this guy.
That's right. You get put in a really special queue.
That's okay.
And there's only so many.
That makes perfect sense. Yeah, that's starting. Yeah. All right. This has been fantastic. As I always learn so many things. Now I've learned I'm not as smart as I think I am. So that's been a realization for this episode that I'm struggling with right now. We have to transition to our next phase of our show. This is what we call the ship it or skip it.
Ship or skip. Everybody, we got to tell us if you ship or skip.
So, ship it or skip it. The idea here is we bring up a topic and you kind of give it your ship it, meaning yes, I like that, let's do that, or skip it, like nah, I don't like it. First one, I mean, we have to throw this out there. It seems like every episode, people have some really interesting opinions, and it's kind of cool because it's a hot topic in the industry right now. Is this notion of like vibe coding? What's your hot take on this thing? What's been your experience? Do you think here to stay? Is it, should we go back to another direction? What do you think?
Look, as someone who's primarily running, operational capabilities, I have to be a skip it for vibe coding, right? I understand, right? Vibe coding is great. You throw a bunch of AI agents together, you build something, you throw it out there. but we see the downsides of that, right? There's that great set of tweets about a guy that said he'd been vibe coding his application for a month, and then all of a sudden it deleted the production database with no backups and no ability to recover it. This was a great story, and the guy literally live tweeted this thing vibe deleting his database. So it's maturing, right? Vibe coding is, we'll say, the AI slop to the flipping that on its head, right? Of vibe effectiveness, right? So once the vibe is a little bit more in tune with what else is going on out there, then I think there's potential for vibe coding, but you still got to be wary.
Yeah, I think, and it's tough to kind of put a concrete definition on the vibe coding thing, but I think what most people kind of key in on is the kind of the how to phrase it the most politically correct way, the untrained, I guess, working with these AI models and just having, slinging code and then just, I always say YOLOing it to prod, right? Without any discipline involved in those sort of things that we have to learn over time. And I've deleted a production database myself. I have.
Who hasn't?
Yeah,
right? It's a part of It's a part of life.
I didn't need AI to do it for me, though. I did it myself. I did these screw ups the old fashioned way on my own. But I think that's that whole notion of let's just take people again. I love the democratization. I love opening up our field and software engineering to more and more people, more creative folks to express themselves through code. Love that idea. However, when it comes to putting products that people are paying money for, putting it in front of folks and asking them to pay money for it, I do think there's a little bit of rigor that you owe your customers, and you need to do that.
Well, and I think in the end, right, you're absolutely right. There's a point for learning, training, experimentation, right? And putting that together with something that says, okay, how do I take that learning, training, experimentation? We need to do that in our lives, right? Yeah, I accidentally deleted a production, all 3 instances of an OpenShift master cluster with Ansible because I if we had this word back in 2017, maybe I vibe coded a little too much Ansible there and ran that out there. So we've all made mistakes and we've all learned, right? And so the question is, how do I take that learning cycle and use it effectively with AI?
Yeah.
And maybe vibe coding is the first step of that. And so for that, to that effect, it's great. And we'll just combine that with a number of, let's all mature that together and we can get to a place where more and more folks can use the tools that we have available to us.
Yeah, I think I was listening to the All In podcast, and they talked about, there was an episode just recently kind of about education and how could AI disrupt higher ed, because we have this awesome tutor available. And I think that's what it's coming down to is vibe coding is really just a specific type of tutoring. I'm teaching you how to code. I'm showing you what code looks like. If I say this English stuff, this is what the code looks like that does what you just said, right? So it's kind of it's a tutor. So treating it in that way and not like a production code mechanism, probably maybe a better way to think about it. But I use it for teaching me all sorts of stuff, and I do find it very helpful.
Yeah, and that's great. I think I was just working through just building out an Ansible library for a few things that I had to do regularly, and I took my products, Portworx products docs, and combine it with a set of code that I had already generated, and then said I wanted to build a few things. And it got me 90% of the way there, right? And if that's vibe coding, hell yeah, I'm all in.
Sign me up. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Right. It was just, there was a second cycle that happened, right? A testing, learning, making sure it worked in a number, testing the failure scenarios and then turn it into something that I could use.
I had this realization yesterday, and I'm going a little off script here, but we had something for an internal product that we needed done, and I was like, well, we could just get one of our people, to take some time in their evenings to do it, and blah blah blah. That's how it always happens. Your internal tools, they never get any love, right? But I was like, well, hold on, let me just try some agent stuff here, and I was able to get it done very quickly. And the realization that I came to is man, this is kind of cool, because my apprehension for doing those things is okay, I got to open up all these things. I got to get my mind down into this thing again and understand it, and then figure out how to change it. the computers can do that very quickly. And I'm thinking like all my side projects now that I'm very apprehensive about opening up and tinkering, I can do that now with these tools. So that's a cool byproduct.
I was talking to a good friend of mine who I used to work with closely, who's at a new organization now, and I think one of the things that we've seen is what we see as something that could in the past be, okay, we need months, we need a few developers on this, we need to, like, it has to be go through all these cycles. You can make it happen if you use your AI tools effectively. They were talking about, hey, I need a Go SDK for this part of our product, right? And they're like, well, we'll get 2 developers, we'll pull them off this thing, we'll put them over here, and we'll do it. And their CTO ended up like vibe coding it over the weekend, and like we said, right, it gets 90% of the way there.
Sure.
But the ability to say, no, I can't do this right now because I'm blocked by all these other things. Look, you can get these things out the door. It's just a matter of having the focus and discipline to make that something that's effective, like effective software delivery with AI. And that takes another cycle, but you can't say, no, we can't do this.
Right.
Like you can do it with the right tooling in place, with the right capabilities. And you have to put those tools, you have to get good information as inputs, right? Because if you have bad information, right, that's where you get, making up functions. You have to have all those inputs to the AI system, right? I was working with, when I was, this example I was saying of my code generation I was working on, I had to go and find, okay, hey, use this as a source and use this as a source. Get all those sources in place, because if I missed one of those, it would start to invent a few functions that didn't exist, and then it was like, all right, I got to go back and rewrite all these because this isn't the right syntax. So you got to do a little information gathering, but you can do things.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of making it happen.
I think we're, us folks who've had to do it manually for so long are going to have to retrain ourselves, because my knee jerk is like, well, I just don't have the time to do that. Well, my calculus that goes on in my brain of the time thing that wasn't very good in the first. I'm not a good estimator. Software engineers are never good estimators, right?
We're not.
We're awful. But even that flawed calculus that my brain would do, whatever that is, that has to be retrained, because it does affect the timing. I was able to, I think it started at like 10 o'clock, and I had something ready to go to production by noon to implement this whole new feature for our internal tool. And I was like, okay, well, I guess I do have the time for that. So now I don't have any excuses. I just admitted it on air. Great. Now I got to do all this stuff. All right. Next ship it or skip it topic. And I don't know that I have I'm informed enough, so I want to hear your answer, and I don't know that I even can lend my own on this at all. But you mentioned Slurm earlier. There does seem to be, is this a Slurm versus Kubernetes? Like, we're going to do one or the other? Are they combining together, or are they at odds with one another? What is this? Is this like the greasers versus the Soch? Like, what are we up against here?
What a great analogy. I think what we're up to right now is what I'm going to ship is these things running into each other and building something that's better than what either one of them brings to the table.
Okay.
There were some murmurings about, actually like SCEDMD and some folks delivering Kubernetes infrastructure working together to deliver a Slurm Kubernetes integration, and Slinky as an open source tool has been emerging there. And there's other projects that are trying to do the same thing. I was just looking at, Karmada is another tool that I've seen organizations use as a, multi-cluster scheduling algorithm. So what I'll say is I am shipping these two tools coming together even more. What I'd really like to see is more of the knowledge and understanding that the HPC ecosystem has, bringing that more effectively into Kubernetes. And this is happening at the edges, right? There's groups within the Kubernetes community that are doing this. And I think we're going to be even better as an industry as the capabilities from Slurm come into, and the knowledge that those organizations have, bring that to bear in the Kubernetes landscape. Because what we see is the AI tools all run on Kubernetes, but we need more of what Slurm has to come to bear to make effective AI infrastructure for us. So I'll say I will skip those two. I'll skip those two being the sharks and the jets, and I will and I'll ship those two. What's the holding hands meme? I'll ship those two as the holding hands meme.
Okay, of like the Arnold and or no, yeah, it was Arnold and Carl Weathers. That one where they're like muscles.
Exactly.
Now
that's what I'm shipping.
It is interesting if you had to put a label, and I used greasers and so from was it The Outsiders, and you're using the Jets. Which one would you say is the greasers? Would that be Kubernetes crowd or is that the Slurm crowd?
Oh man, I don't know. We'll say that the Slurm crowd is maybe the more old school, more well established, and the Kubernetes are like the new kids on the block. I don't know how would that map to the analogies that we put together.
I don't know if it cleanly does. I don't know if they cluster together in that way. That's not the linearly separable boundary that we would use to draw a line between them.
It's like they've moved in from like the neighborhoods got merged together. They moved from they moved from across the city, and now they're next to each other on the east side or something, and they've got to learn to live next to one another.
We're gonna have to write an all new play or whatever.
We'll get it on Broadway soon.
I love it. Yeah. Anyway, all right. So that's it for Ship It or Skip It. Now, okay. So this is, and I don't know if you're a listener of the podcast, but this is, if you are, and for the audience, they know this is the most important aspect of the show. This is what all of this stuff was just kind of a warm up, right? This was just us stretching out and getting ready for the real bit of the show that people really tuned in for. This is our lightning round. This is where the answers do matter, to steal a phrase from, what is it? Whose line is it anyway? They always say, these answers do matter and they're very important. So, don't take them, don't just give a glib answer, and just kind of off the cuff. Like you need to give real answers here because it does matter.
Ready.
Yeah. And right now I'm just honestly stalling so I can find my rapid fire questions that I have. But I do usually lay it on thick, but this is the important stuff that people are really hankering for. That's a word still these days. Do people say hankering? Is that a thing?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Yeah. You're like, I don't even know what the word is. So yeah, nobody says it. All right. Cake or pie?
I'm a cake guy. That's, it might be problematic. There's certain pies that can like elevate, but I feel like to me they elevate to the realm of cake. So it's like when you have a really good pie, it's like, oh yeah, this pie is as good as cakes I've had, but like really good cake, it's a level above. So it's got to be cake.
Yeah, cake never strives to be pie, is what you're saying.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
It's like a really good pie can be like, oh man, this is as delicious as this this delicious robust chocolate cake I had the other day. It's like, well, you could have just had the chocolate cake and had it perfect, and it would be a level above.
Yeah, because if you really looked at like cheesecake, it's more like a pie.
Well, that's the problem.
Yeah.
It's like what? So the question is, where's the actual line? Because it's like Boston cream pie, is that a pie or is it a cake? Like and cream cake, cheesecake is more like a pie than it is a cake. Boston, like, what is?
But that's my point. It is clearly a pie. Cheesecake is clearly a pie. It's got a pie crust, but it calls itself a cake. That it is striving to be cake. It wants desperately to be a cake. Okay, so I'm with you on this. I think that's a great answer. Okay. You get 72 points for that one.
Good. Oh man.
Yeah, that's
I feel like I'm off to a good start.
Yeah, you're off to a really, really good start. Have you ever seen a kangaroo in person?
A kangaroo in person? I don't know that I can definitively say that I've seen a kangaroo in person. It would only ever be at a zoo. Mm-hmm. And I'm just trying to think about if any of my zoo experiences have included kangaroos. It didn't make a big imprint on my life. So I have to say I'm leaning to no, and I might need to go find a zoo and go see a kangaroo in person just because I missed out on that experience.
Okay. Do you Instagram your food?
No. Oh gosh, no. I don't Instagram much of anything, so I might not be the person to ask that. The only thing I would do is I would like text my food to my wife, and the problem with that is that if I'm out, I travel a good deal for work. I go to a number of dinners. If I text my food to my wife, that means I then have to come home and take my wife to a dinner that I've texted her, equivalent level of. And so that's very dangerous. So if I Instagram my food, I think I would have that even further demanded of me. So no, I don't Instagram my food.
Okay. I like that. Yeah. So you're kind of setting, it's almost like a promissory note, that text of food to your wife almost.
It's dangerous.
Yeah.
You get some really good Brussels sprouts, you get a steak. It's like, I'm going to come home and we're going to find a time to go get a steak and Brussels sprouts.
Yeah, I can see that. That's quite the conundrum. Scale of 1 to 10. How good are you at trivia?
I am. So this answer is going to be biased by the fact that I worked closely with a guy who writes crossword puzzles and won an episode of Jeopardy.
Whoa.
So I'm like a 5.
Okay.
Because I have seen what Neville can do with a round of trivia, and I'm just not in the same ballpark as him. I love trivia, but I absolutely know that like those people that are really good at trivia, I'm just not in their realm in any sense.
Do you find that people who are good at trivia, like you wouldn't necessarily label them as academics?
No, he was just really good at gathering information.
Mm-hmm.
He wrote LA Times crossword puzzles, he wrote New York Times crossword puzzles, and he could just put things together and connect pieces of information in a way that was unique of anyone that I've ever met, right? You see people in different domains that are uniquely able to do that, and he just could connect information and gather information and store it in his brain in a way that I don't think anyone I've ever seen can do.
That's fantastic. All right. What temperature do you like your thermostat at?
I think I like it to be comfortable and appropriate for the season. So right now, the temperature in my house is 72. Like I'm not a cold person. At night, we have a ceiling fan. I'll bring it down, to the 68 range. In the winter, it's like not too hot, right? In the winter, I'll have it 68. I'll let it adjust to the season a little bit because you don't want to go outside and have it be completely absurd, right? I used to live in Minnesota where our first winter there was the coldest winter since 1978. It was, got down to negative 26. It was miserable. Our car definitely struggled to start out in that. So I like to adjust it to the seasons, but that range of 68 to 72, I can be comfortable anywhere in there, but it's got to be cold at night. That's the goal.
Yeah. Now, usually a part of this conversation usually evolves around, or it devolves to like, well, my wife likes it here and I like it. Do you find yourselves incompatible with the thermostat thing?
You know what? I think after being married for 13 years now, we have found ourselves in harmony, and we're further evolving to be closer to one another. We both like it cold when it's cold out. We'll both throw the windows open. We had that first bit of fall here in Cincinnati where the highs were in the upper 60s, and we windows open, get a breeze going through. So I think we've got ourselves on a good page here, and that's not a conflict in our relationship. Well,
if she does listen to this episode, that was a fantastic answer, and enjoy your steak and Brussels sprouts that he's going to be taking you to.
Apparently, I'll add one of the to the tally.
Yeah, exactly. Which animal adds more joy to the world? Would you say squirrels or llamas?
I feel like squirrels have an element of chaos that, llamas have chaos, but it's like funny chaos, right? You see a video of a llama spitting on someone. I think I'm going to go llama. What I want to do is go ask my 6-year-old this question.
Okay.
He watches Wild Kratts religiously and absolutely loves animals. He can tell you anything about, you pick an animal, he'll start telling you all sorts of facts about it. I can't even start. So I think he is the one that should answer this question. And just knowing him, the answer that he's going to give is that llamas give more happiness to the world.
I could go either way on this one. I don't feel like there's a right or wrong answer. I feel like squirrels or llamas could bring joy. It's a tough one. It's a toss up for me.
I don't know that I don't know that I've met a squirrel that I've liked. Like they've always been like
A nuisance.
a competitor of some
Ah,
sort of like, yeah, like I don't want to feed a squirrel. I want to like feed a llama.
okay.
So
I can see that. I can see
yeah.
that. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you enjoy garlic?
Oh, like 9.8.
Okay.
There can be too much garlic, right? So you got to temper from the 10. But man, good
Lay it
a
on.
good garlic sauce. Oh, lay it on. Yeah, absolutely. That steak and Brussels sprouts is lathered in garlic,
Yeah.
and it's a necessity.
I don't know how they make this stuff. They used to eat at this place up in Detroit, and it was like a Mediterranean place, I think. But they had this. It was like a butter, but it's garlic with
Yes,
oil, and
in
it's
the
like an emulsion, and it's fantastic.
when you have the garlic like in the garlic clove that they can butter
Oh
out of
yeah,
that. Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
100%. Like that is the class of the class right there.
All right, and finally, I do a lot of food questions. I don't know. Actually, you know what? Let's go Super Mario Brothers or Zelda for you.
Oh man, I'm not a big video game guy personally.
But you
So
have to have an
I'll
opinion. You
say
know what I mean? Like,
if I had to have an opinion, I'll go Super Mario Bros. Just because of like, I'd play them in Smash or
yeah.
something like that. But I've never gotten into Zelda personally, so it's just I don't have a strong opinion here. But if I had to choose, it would be the Super Mario Bros. I feel like the teamwork element of the two of them together, like positive reinforcement between the two of them. I gotta give it up to Super
So
Mario.
you're all about collaboration. And now is Link
Oh
not
yeah.
when you're playing Smash Brothers? Is Link not a good character? He would seem to be very very spry.
Link, I'm not good enough at any of these games to know where I'm at,
Okay.
but I feel like I've never played Link when I was playing Smash. It was never my
Okay.
go-to. I feel like I was still more on the base, like kind of some of the baseline characters when I was playing out there.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. All right. Well, is there anything you did a great job. We still have to run the scoring through the tallying machine. It's an algorithm. You know what I mean? There's a lot to
Of
it.
course, of
We
course.
can't do that in real time. We will respond back with your score. That'll be offline. But just kind of feel like you did pretty well. You started off really strong. I felt that the kangaroo thing might have thrown you on. I'm not quite sure. Not ever
Yeah.
seeing one, or even if you saw one, it didn't make an impact in your life. That could hurt you. I don't know.
Yeah, you know what? I feel hurt by the kangaroo. I'm gonna have to go look up where my nearest kangaroo
I
is,
think we
so
have
I can
some. I mean, we have
go
to have them
figure
at
that
the
out.
Cincinnati Zoo. We have to.
If we do, I've probably seen them
Right.
too. But I might have to go this weekend.
Yeah. I mean, we got the Komodos. We've got some great stuff at our zoo. I mean, we got Fiona. I mean,
We have Fiona.
everybody
I
knows
mean,
Fiona.
if you'd asked me if I've ever seen a hippopotamus, it's like,
Of course.
yeah,
Yeah.
of course.
I actually wanted one for Christmas at one point. Just kidding. Um, any closing remarks? Any parting words, thoughts? Anything you got coming up you want to tell us about? Projects or are you speaking anywhere soon? You have blog posts, articles, books, anything? What's going on?
Yeah, I think the thing I really like to promote is just the ability to get together in person. I think in the post-COVID world, we can do so much remotely. We're doing this remotely, right? But there's an aspect of collaboration and growth that happens because of that in-person conversation. So my upcoming things, I'm helping run the Cincinnati CNCF meetup, which we're doing a monthly fall series right now, trying to develop and build that community. I'm also speaking at Red Hat Summit Connect events throughout the Midwest. I'm going to be in Chicago, Minneapolis, and Detroit over the course of the month of October. You can go check out the Red Hat Summit Connect event page for more information there. I'll also be at KubeCon. I'm running workshops for the VMs on Kubernetes Day, and we'll be doing a number of events out in Atlanta here in November. So the thing that I'd like to promote is, whenever you see me out and about, when you have the ability to get together in person, I think there's a unique aspect of collaboration and growth and learning that can happen in person. And don't hesitate to reach out and say, hey, don't hesitate to hit me up on LinkedIn and see where, say where you'll be going. And I'd love to get together and grow community that way. We all have, I think there's unique challenges in our jobs these days of, growing, internal community within our, where we all work. But there's an aspect of the broader technological community that is grown through in-person interaction. And that's what I'm looking forward to over the course of the next 2 months.
That's great. Well, thank you for joining us here on the podcast. I know whenever I speak to you, I think, this guy knows his stuff. I need to dig into this and educate myself more in this area. But I feel like even if I do, the next time I get together with you, it's like, well, he learned more things now. And now it's like, I'm never going to catch you. You're like Matthew McConaughey's like 10 years future self kind of thing. Like I'm always striving to be at your level of knowledge on this stuff.
We're all learning too, right? We all have our areas of expertise and growth, and that's where I think I'm really grateful to be in this ecosystem and in this broader community, because we all have our areas of expertise and we can all learn from one another, and it creates this great opportunity for all of us to learn and grow together.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you again for being here on the podcast with us. I really appreciate you coming.
Thanks, James. It's been great to be here.
All right. Well, if you'd like to get in touch with us, drop us a line at /@calibrity.com. See you next time. The / podcast is created by Calibrity. Our director is Dylan Courts, producer Ryan Wilson, with editing by Steve Baradelli. Marketing support comes from Taylor Blessing. I'm your host, James Carman. Thanks for listening.